Welcome to the Thriving Misfits podcast, the podcast where we celebrate resilience, embrace diversity, and challenge norms. I'm your host, Fiona Young, and today I'm so excited. It's the very first time that we're actually recording together in the same studio with my guest. And today we're having Fuji Sartono, a very personal friend of mine, but also an amazing, inspiring leader here in Asia, because the season 3, we're all going to be talking about Asian leadership reimagined. So welcome, Fuji.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Fiona. Thanks for having me.
So Fuji and I were both neighbors. Our families get along extremely well. But Fuji and I, we both also resonate in terms of how we grew up as third culture individuals. And we're still third culture individuals. I mean, just look at your name, Fuji. How did that come about?
Well, yeah, it's a long story, but it's an interesting one, nevertheless. You know, that's the first thing that usually people who get to know me will ask me about my name. So when I was born, my parents were living in Japan already. So my father must have felt inspired by the mountain, Mount Fuji. So that's how he ended up calling my name.
All right, because I thought he was actually Japanese, but actually he is Indonesian. Yes. Indonesian citizen. Yeah. Now, today we're going to be unraveling a lot more about Fuji's whereabouts, his identity, and also how he's taking on Asian leadership reimagined. So, Fuji, there's so much that we're going to be talking about today. You are the head of product management for a multinational company. But before we dive into your corporate life, even though we already know each other pretty well, but I think there are still some secrets or some things that I do not know about him. So let's do this icebreaker where you tell me 2 truths and 1 lie, and I have to guess the lie.
Okay. Well, I have to say that I've never played this game before. And you caught me off guard, so to say. But 2 truths and 1 lie. Okay, let me think about this. So, first one is that I speak Japanese. Mm-hmm. Okay. The second one is that I've done a triathlon.
Okay.
Okay. And the third one is that happily married with 2 kids.
All right. So I would say the triathlon is the lie.
That's correct.
But actually, you did an aquathlon.
I did do an aquathlon. So I wanted to twist it a little bit to catch you off guard.
So tell us more about aquathlon, because I know that apart from being an amazing leader in an organization, you also love sports and fitness. So aquathlon, tell us about that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I've always been drawn to challenging myself, you know, whether it's in my personal life or whether it's in the corporate life. So I've been running, doing exercises for quite a while already. I would say for a number of years, a good part of 10 to 15 years. But I've never done an aquathlon before. So I thought, what a great opportunity to push myself, break that boundary, so to say. And I'm happy that 2 weeks ago, I did my first aquathlon, and I had a runner's high for the next 2 or 3 days. I felt very, very fulfilled. And I think that resonates as well with a lot of things that I experienced throughout my life and throughout my career. So that's
congratulations.
Thank you.
This is not a small feat.
Thank you.
Now, let's dive a little bit more into your identity. You and I, we both lived in lots of different countries. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's so difficult to actually even answer the question, where is your home? Mm-hmm. Or what is your native language?
Right.
So I know that you grew up as a diplomat's child. How did that shape you to who you are right now as an adult?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. A diplomat's son, right? That was a big part, or is still a big part of my identity as I was growing up. It was the easiest way to explain who I was to my friends or to my colleagues when I was growing up, because I had such a different, personality and upbringing, and my friends and colleagues often wondered, what's my background. So explaining that I was a diplomat's son was an easy answer to explain. And of course, they would ask further questions about what that means. Right?
Yeah.
So I would maybe summarize it that my upbringing was very different in a way that I was moving every 3 to 4 years. which means that I did not really have a base or a foundation or a cultural identity, so to say. And that presented quite a big, challenge as I was growing up.
Yeah.
But of course, in hindsight, I look upon my experience as a very positive thing because it made me become a very flexible and adaptable person,
Yeah.
both professionally and individually. So yeah, I would say that in summary is how I would describe myself in the context of a diplomat's son.
I mean, it's so challenging, right? When I grew up in Germany in the 80s, there were actually no other Asian kids in school. So I was always the only one.
Right.
I would say that I didn't move as much as you did, but nevertheless, looking different. The upbringing was different, as you mentioned, because even though my parents wanted us, me and my brother, to integrate and hence always made sure that we speak more German than any other language at home. But nevertheless, we're still being seen as the others.
Right.
Especially, I remember as a teenager. As a teenager, you already have this whole turmoil in terms of your own identity. And then on top of that comes the cultural identity that you're struggling with. And I remember whenever I would travel back home to, or I say home, but where is really home, right? But whenever I would visit my relatives back in Malaysia during the summer holidays, I was not Asian or Malaysian enough. I didn't speak the language fluently. And they made fun of me. And then back in Germany, because I look different, all the racial slurs, which unfortunately is still happening. But how did you cope with that as a teenager?
Yeah, I mean, it triggers some memories. But, let's talk openly about this because I hope that, your audiences could also relate and maybe find some learning points from our upbringing, not just mine, but also our shared experiences. Yeah, it was difficult. I experienced some of those let's say, racially motivated comments by by my
diplomat
friends.
son, very diplomatic.
I tried to choose my words carefully. But yeah, I remember being in school, being the only Asian in school. And as you said, this was in the 80s, where Asians in a Western nation was very, very rare. So it was rare for me to be in a Western dominated, class or society or, school. But it's also rare for them to see an Asian kid who they might feel, hey, does this person belong here or not? So I've also received, comments that did not sound so nice. I did not know what to make of it back then. Of course, I think my parents did not prepare me well enough. Not saying anything negative about it, but we just grew up in a different society.
A different generation.
Right? Exactly. Yeah. So it was something that only after many years I reflected upon those moments and said, hey, yeah, it was difficult, but it also made me stronger, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, in hindsight, I also believe that all of these adversities and experiences that I had made me the person who I am right now. But I think in that moment, especially as a teenager, where you're already struggling so much as an individual, then you have all of these additional layers on top of that creates the compounding effect. Now, we both have children who are also third culture kids.
Yes.
I mean, what would you do differently now with your children?
Well, I don't know if I do it consciously or unconsciously, maybe a little bit of both. Me and my wife decided, several years ago that I did not want my kids to grow up the way I did. So we did deliberately choose stability over moving, from one location to another. So as you know, we've been now in this country for 10 to 11 years. And I think that stability is something that I hope my children would appreciate because I grew up with instability. But at the same time, they're also in a environment where, there's a lot of international students and expats. So they do see their friends come and go. And they are also exposed to different cultures and languages and people who look different to them. So I think it's, best of both worlds, I would say. Stability, but also exposure to the different, societies that will become even more important as they grow up.
That's the balance that we need to make,
yes,
right? Yeah, it's quite challenging for sure. But I think there's also so much beauty in traveling around the world, meeting new cultures, being really like really embracing the different diversities that we have in this world. And I know you also have this love for Africa. I mean, I traveled to Tanzania, never been to Africa before that. So a year before the pandemic hit us, me and my husband actually climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, right? Yeah. So I fell in love with the people, fell in love with the food and the culture. How did you fall in love with Africa?
I was in Africa in the mid 80s. And that was during the famine era in Ethiopia, in fact, right? So that was an interesting experience. I was approximately 11 or 12, and I'm dating myself here. But I fell in love with it for several reasons, I would say. And again, I say this in hindsight, right? Because when you're in the moment, you take things for granted, I think. But, I looking back, I appreciated that my father always made sure that he brought us to the corners of Addis Ababa, capital city of Ethiopia, which was the real, Ethiopia, right? So how the famines affected the societies there. So he always made sure that we understood that we lived a privileged life, whereas the society around where we lived actually were not as fortunate as us. So looking back, that again, we talked about balance. That grounded me, I think, in straddling between the two worlds that we were growing up in. The world of comfort, the world of international citizenship, and the benefits of being in a diplomat's environment and family, but also the reality in the countries that we grew up in.
Yeah. Well, now let's deep dive a little bit more into your professional life. Sure. You are the head of product management for a multinational organization. I previously was in corporate as well for 14 years with oil and gas. I then moved from Germany to Asia, and I thought that relocation would be smooth sailing because I'm Asian, I'm Chinese, by origin, should be easy to integrate into Hong Kong in 2010. But I actually experienced this reverse cultural shock. And people actually, when they look at me, they see this Asian appearance, Chinese lady. And then when I open my mouth, then all of a sudden they get so surprised and even shocked that, how come this Asian woman is so I don't even want to say assertive because they use the word aggressive, right? Okay. So how is that for you? Because you grew up, you've lived in so many different countries, different cultures. That definitely has influenced who you are and how you lead and communicate. So when people see you, when your colleagues see you, do they see the Asian and then all of a sudden when you act and communicate, it's all different and they get so shocked?
Interesting question once again. Shocked? Yeah, maybe a little bit to a certain extent. I would say the story is similar to yours, except for one difference, I would say maybe, that I started my career in Asia, whereas you started your career in Germany. So I think for you, your journey, before and after moving to Asia was quite distinct, right? Whereas I started my first job in Singapore. But, I could feel from day one that I was different because of my name and my upbringing and my, the education that I received and the experiences that I had as a student and so on and so forth. So it's something that I wouldn't say play along, but I rode on that, distinctness. And that's I would say how I developed my career by straddling between my identity growing up in the Western world, but also adjusting myself to the Asian, ways of doing things in the corporate world, in your company culture, and so on. So. Right.
Now, there's also a lot of talk around leadership qualities and attributes. Typically, we would define leadership as someone who is assertive, someone who is vocal, someone who can make decisions very clearly and transparently, direct communication. But here in Asia, it's slightly different, as we all know. How would you perhaps share or educate other Western leaders in the organization to also respect this type of leadership qualities here in Asia?
Yeah, in my experience, in the companies that I was working in, both today and in the past, and I can quote that I've worked for American company, a Dutch company, and now a German company. I would say the Western leaders who are located here in Asia has done a good job in adapting their expectations and their style to the way we operate in Asia. So maybe I would say that I was lucky in that sense that my leadership team, my managers were able to adapt, right? But at the same time, I would say during my process of rising in the corporate world, I'm proud of the things that I've achieved, right? But I'm also proud of the things where I failed, miserably, countless times. And you asked and mentioned about styles, right? Assertive versus giving in, perhaps is the word, or giving clear directions versus getting everyone's opinion together. Yeah. So I think that for a leader, whether you're Asian or Western, if you're able to adopt, different traits and be flexible at the same time, I think that's one of the keys to success, in my opinion.
Definitely. I mean, it's all about adapting, not only regarding cultures, but also, I mean, just knowing who you're talking to, right? Adapting your communication, your leadership style to the individual. And I know these days, especially for first-time managers, it's so tough because they think that they rose up the ranks because they've done a great job as an individual contributor.
Right. Yeah.
But then all of a sudden, as a manager, they need to utilize different skills.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, there's a whole thing about unlearning what you were good at when you were in a certain position and you rise up and suddenly you have to learn a new set of skills.
Yes.
Not just the skills that job demands of you, but also your communication skills, your leadership skills, how you deal with different people in different functions and so on and so forth. So yeah, it was an interesting journey, which I'm sure you also went through such journeys as well.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, for me, I didn't move to so many different companies. It was just always that one company, which for a millennial is also not very millennial-like because we were being labeled as job hoppers, right? But for me, I've only stayed in one company 14 years, but in different locations, different functions. And yes, again, you have to adapt. And for me, coming to Asia was the biggest adaptation because here we always say Asia, right? And even our topic is around Asian leadership, but Asia is so large. Like I don't even know how many countries we have in Asia, and everyone actually behaves so differently.
Exactly. Yeah.
Now, when we talk about adaptation, there's also this, I would say, other angle to look at it that do people feel authentic enough then if you're constantly adapting? Like how can you make sure that you still feel like your true authentic self, yet adapting to, the society or to the team, for example?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I talked about failures, right? I can share that was one of my failures when I was a junior, guy in a company trying to rise up the corporate world, where, and again, maybe connecting this to my upbringing of being, a diplomat's son, where I try to please, different individuals from different, functions and departments, which resulted in me not having, a solid core principle because I was trying to make peace with everyone. And you know how corporate world works, right? Different functions has their own targets and KPIs, and they are deliberately built to be conflicting because that's how you move the organization forward, right? So I was always trying to say yes to all the different functions, whether it's sales or supply chain or management. So I would say, to your question of adaptability, maybe I adapted too much to the point that I did not have, a solid core principle. That's something that I realized throughout my journey, also with the help of mentors and different managers, pointing out such weaknesses that I needed to overcome. So yeah, over the years, I grew confidence in my own abilities, in my own style, in what I believe in.
Yeah.
And that is how I adapted throughout my career.
Yeah. Yeah, because authenticity is still an extremely important leadership
Sure.
quality.
Yes.
You can't just fake it, right?
You can't. Yeah. You can't fake it till you make it in this example.
Now, when it comes to your cultural identity, how would you define it now when people ask you, where's your home?
My home, I would say the first answer, the instinctive answer is that wherever my family is, that is my home. And perhaps that's the same with you as well, right?
I always say it sounds cheesy, but home is where my heart is, and where my heart is with my family.
Yeah, so it's not a location or a place or where you were born, but it's where you feel comfortable.
Yeah.
And I think the same can be said about your work being your home, in the sense that if that work is a place of comfort for you, is a place of fulfillment for you, helps you to achieve your personal and career goals, that could also be your home,
right?
I would say, right? So yeah, that's where my home is, maybe I would say.
Yeah. Now, final question, very important. Your, I would say, key advice, your advice to people who are listening right now, who feel that they're struggling, that they don't feel they belong, maybe a first-time leader who comes from a different culture and now taking over a team. What kind of advice would you give that person?
Yeah, let me put my thoughts together. Because I try to draw from my own experience. I would say, believe in yourself first. Be sure you know who you are, right? What are your core beliefs? And your core beliefs doesn't necessarily need to be tied to the company, right? To me, I feel that your core beliefs should be both personal and work related, right?
Yeah.
I strongly believe that, you work to live, and you live also to contribute to the company that you're working for, right? And that that relationship must be, intact.
Yeah.
So know yourself, know what you believe in. And once you know that, I think the behaviors that you exhibit in your work, how you communicate with your managers, with your team, with other functions, I think will just naturally come by itself.
I mean, I'm a strong believer about core values as well, and for me, I was very fortunate, I think through a mentor of mine in my early 20s, to figure out my core values.
Yeah.
And they remain the same. So I always I do these kind of activities also with my coaching clients, because it's really important, not only for juniors, but also very senior management, because they are the ones who have to advocate the vision and the mission statement, the values of the company. But then sometimes when I ask them, do you even know your own core values?
Right. Yeah.
They don't really.
And they struggle, right?
Yeah. And it's so important to figure that out for yourself, and also to see whether they are in alignment with how you live your life at home and also at work.
Yeah.
Because sometimes when we feel we struggle is oftentimes where our values do not match what's happening in our environment.
Right.
When our core values are being met, we are also much more resilient when times get tough.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, there are people that I know who are very good at keeping two identities. They go to work and they put on a mask, and they're totally fine with that.
Yeah.
They come home, they're able to take off their mask and live their personal family life, in good order. I'm not such a person where, I need to be the same person I am at home and at work, right? And I have been through, stressful situations in the past when these two identities doesn't match, as you, rightly described. So find yourself. But also, to add to your first question, what advice could I give? Be humble. Always be hungry to learn. I'm at the stage of my career where, I'm happy where I am today, right? It doesn't mean that I don't want to rise even further. But that also means that I have to tell myself that I have to continue to be humble, continue to learn from others,
Yes.
Even from people and colleagues who may be my junior. There is still a lot to learn from
absolutely
from them, right?
Yeah. So, and I think also our personal passion, what we're doing as a side hustle or whatever you want to call it, also helps us to ignite that spark that will kind of have a ripple effect into our professional lives. Because right now I'm reading this book called The Hidden Potential by Adam Grant. I love Adam Grant. His books are amazing. So this is, I think, his third book or so. And he actually talks about having these personal passions, because sometimes companies don't really want to embrace that or enforce that, because they feel that their employees then all of a sudden don't have the focus on their jobs anymore. But actually, whatever we do also in our personal lives actually helps us create that spark also in our professional lives. Do you have something like that?
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of hobbies, as you know, privately. I enjoy producing music, writing my own songs. And I went through a journey like everyone did during COVID of taking up a new hobby. So I did that. And I think that kept my mind sharp, always hungry to learn. I'm right now challenging myself to learn a new language, which is Japanese, which is ironic because I have a Japanese name. And the first thing that people usually ask is whether I speak Japanese. So I feel bad that I don't speak Japanese. So I'm learning that as well. But I think you can learn from many sources. I think through our frequent social interactions privately, I learn a lot also from you. So I think keeping an active social life is also very helpful in learning about new things and taking on new ideas and opening up your mind to, new perspectives and so on. And as you said, it has a ripple effect, a positive effect on your work life as well.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Fuji. Thank you so much for being the first guest in person in this makeshift studio. So today we really talked more and deep dive into culture and all these layers of identities. And it's not just that one identity that shapes you. There's so many other things, whether it's cultural identity or any other diversity aspects that we haven't even touched on today. So it's really great, Fuji, for you to be our first in-person guest today. Learned so much from you, and I'm sure the listeners as well. So if you feel that this podcast episode is going to be useful for your friends or your family, make sure that you share this episode with them. Make sure that you also subscribe and follow us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. And we're going to see you again next time, because it's really about breaking the bamboo ceiling, one conversation at a time. Bye for now.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's been an honor.
Thanks, Fuji.
Thank you.